At 10:22 in the middle of the Pacific, the clouds opened for a few minutes, and in that brief clearing, World War II changed direction. Below the break in the sky, Japanese aircraft carriers were turning into the wind, decks crowded, fuel lines running, bombs and torpedoes being moved from hand to hand, while above them, American dive bombers were already dropping out of the sun. This was the Battle of Midway, June 1942, and it wasn't just a fight over a small atoll, it was a fight over momentum, over who would control the center of the Pacific and who would be forced to defend for the rest of the war. After Pearl Harbor, Japan's navy expanded fast, the American Pacific Fleet was wounded, and the ocean was enormous, but the United States still had aircraft carriers, its only tool to strike back at long range, and Japan's plan was designed to eliminate them in a decisive trap. Midway Atoll was the bait. Threaten it, and the U.S. carriers would have to respond. When they did, Japan's experienced carrier force would destroy them. On paper, it depended on one fragile thing: surprise. But in Hawaii, American codebreakers listened closely and pieced together enough radio traffic to see a target labeled AF. Suspecting Midway, but needing proof, they used a simple test. Midway sent a harmless radio message in the clear about a specific problem, and soon Japanese traffic reported that AF had the same issue: quiet confirmation that Midway was the target. Admiral Nimitz chose ambush over defense, placing his carriers northeast of Midway, out of sight, betting everything on timing and intelligence. Enterprise and Hornet moved into position, and Yorktown, damaged earlier, was repaired at frantic speed and sent back to sea, still scarred but still fighting. Across the ocean, Japan approached with confidence, believing the American carriers would be late or cautious, believing the trap was theirs. Dawn on June 4th brought gray light over endless water as Midway launched everything it could: fighters, bombers, torpedo planes, knowing many were outmatched, but aiming to force the Japanese carriers to react and stay busy. The first Japanese strike battered the atoll, yet Midway kept fighting and signaled it was still operational, and that message forced a decision: a second strike might be needed to finish the job. Aircraft returning to the carriers were prepared again, decks grew crowded, fuel and ordnance moved quickly, planes shifted into position, and the carriers became dangerous factories of speed. Then uncertainty arrived as scouts searched for the American fleet. One key scout launched late, others searched empty ocean, and in a battle of minutes, those minutes began to slip away. A report finally came: American ships, carriers, and the Japanese commander had to pivot instantly, rearm aircraft from land attack loads to anti-ship weapons, swap bombs and torpedoes, move fueled planes again, turning the flight decks into packed, volatile spaces with little margin for error. Meanwhile, American aircraft were already in the air, launched from Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown into a sky so wide it swallowed coordination. Some groups flew too far, others searched the wrong direction, radio calls overlapped, and fuel started to matter. Then came the attacks remembered for sacrifice: American torpedo squadrons, slow planes flying low over the water, arrived first, and though they were meant to strike in coordination, the plan broke down, so they attacked anyway, low, straight, and exposed, while Japanese fighters dropped to meet them, and anti-aircraft fire stitched the air above the waves. Many were shot down, some launched torpedoes, most did not return. Those attacks scored little immediate damage, but they changed the battle by dragging Japanese fighter cover down to sea level and forcing the carriers to maneuver hard, keeping attention locked low at the worst possible moment. High above, American dive bombers were still searching and running out of time and fuel, the ocean below empty and endless, until a clue appeared: a lone enemy ship racing across the water as if hurrying to rejoin something important. The dive bomber leaders followed it, and it led them straight to the carriers. Now the timing turned brutal. Below, 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, were in the middle of rearming and reorganizing, aircraft on deck,
weapons being handled, fuel vapors in the air, powerful yet suddenly vulnerable. The dive bombers rolled into their dives, the horizon spun, decks surged up in their sights, and bombs fell. One hit, then another, fires starting where fuel and ordnance were concentrated, smoke climbing fast, deck crews scrambling to push aircraft aside and fight flames. But on a carrier, fire spreads with terrifying speed, and within minutes, 3 carriers were burning, their ability to launch aircraft collapsing. The battle wasn't finished. One carrier remained operational, Hiryu, and it struck back quickly, finding Yorktown. Bombs hit, the carrier shuddered, smoke rose, the ship listed, then steadied as damage control teams fought to keep her alive, and for a moment it seemed she might survive, until a second wave came and torpedoes struck, slowing her and forcing a heavier list as the crew kept working anyway. Enterprise and Hornet continued launching strikes, and later that day American aircraft found Hiryu and dove through flak and smoke. Bombs hit, Hiryu caught fire, and the last operational Japanese carrier in the battle was knocked out. As daylight faded, the ocean filled with smoke columns, damaged ships, and scattered survivors, as both sides rescued where they could and watched for submarines. Japan withdrew, and the Americans pressed cautiously, aware the sea could still hide a final trap. When the smoke cleared, the result was staggering. Japan had lost 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, ships that took years to build and longer to fill with experienced aircrews. The United States would lose Yorktown soon after, but the strategic exchange was decisive. Midway did not end the Pacific War, but it broke something essential, the idea that Japan's carrier force was unstoppable and the belief that America could only react. After Midway, Japan increasingly fought defensively, while the United States began the long push westward, and it all hinged on a morning when a scout launched late, carrier decks crowded with the wrong weapons at the wrong time, and dive bombers arrived in the one opening the sky allowed. Why Midway is remembered not just as a battle, but as a turning point measured in minutes.